Hey, we're back for another episode of Rock and Roll Confessional.
Hi, CW.
It's me, CW. That's Rita over there on the other side. And first off, we want to thank all of our listeners and new listeners. Welcome back, man, to old listeners. Welcome to new listeners. If this is the first episode, you're in for a damn treat.
Today's guest is Martin Popoff. Martin is the author of over 100 books on hard rock, heavy metal, classic rock, and record collecting, bringing both archival depth and fan-first storytelling. Today, we're speaking with Martin about his new book, Kiss 76.
Kiss was formed in 1973 as one of the hardest working bands in rock, releasing 3 studio albums and their breakthrough Alive in 1974/75, setting the stage for a true breakthrough into superstardom. 50 years on, Martin Popoff frames the band's nonstop momentum in 1976, 2 landmark studio albums, a relentless touring schedule, and the birth of the Kiss Army fan club.
Written with the fan's eye and the historian's rigor, Kiss 76 follows the band around the world and into the studio, pairing detailed album analysis with on-the-road reportage and archival discoveries. As Popoff puts it in the prologue, this is the story of 1976 by someone with way too much Kiss on the brain, a voice that gives the book its affectionate insider energy while never losing sight of the year's bigger picture.
So let's do it, man. Here's our interview with heavy metal author Martin Popoff.
Welcome again. Hey, it's Rock and Roll Confessional. I'm Rita Wild, CW West, along with Martin Popoff, who has just finished up a book called Kiss 76, 12 months that defined the hottest band in the land. One thing in reading your book, Martin, that I didn't really realize is that how big the glam scene was in England, but it never really took off here. I mean, it did well in the UK with Slade and Sweet and T-Rex, but it kind of redefined itself here with Alice Cooper and Kiss.
Yeah, that's a fascinating topic. I mean, I feel like the glam scene is only a UK thing because here it was just so different, so much smaller, and everybody generally looked really cool here, and everybody generally looked like a complete idiot in the UK, including David Bowie. Let's not leave David Bowie out of this with his stupid mullet and his whatever that thing he was wearing during Ziggy Stardust, which everybody worships. You know, I think he looked like an idiot. But he is a fashion icon at certain later times in his life to make up for it, but not then. That whole glam thing looked absolutely preposterous, but I think the New York Dolls looked amazing. Alice Cooper looked pretty cool the way they were doing things. I think Lou Reed was pretty cool. So it was a whole different vibe. I think that cross-gender thing was looked at as a little more serious and offensive in America, and over there they took it a little more as a joke. So that's part of it, but also just the fashion sense was so bad over there. And then I just put Kiss in a category that's not even part of this glam thing because it's just so over the top and it's quite masculine and tough and violent looking too. And it's a unified package. I just don't feel there's much there. And I think the main reason we can link it to that is a little more esoteric and abstract. And that's the fact that their sound was a little bit like Heavy Sweet or Heavy Slade.
You know, when I grew up, when Destroyer 76, I was in high school, and Kiss always seemed like that band that you either love or you hate, or you couldn't quite figure out, because I think the glam was not so accepting, or, you know, here in the US, you know, I was listening to The Rush and Supertramp and a lot of these other bands. Kiss never kind of fell into what I was listening. And I think it was because it's like, oh, they're so over the top. They're so weird. We're going to put them over here to the side and see what they do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people rejected them because of the image, but also they made intentionally simplistic music. It wasn't like we can't do any further than this. It's like they were doing that on purpose. It was part of the vision, songs that would carry over well on stage. And I can see. So, thinking back to my own camp, it's like we loved everything heavy. So Kiss was perfectly fine to be in with all these other bands. If you were like a rock critic or into singer-songwriter stuff, etc., you would put down Kiss. If you were exclusively a prog person, you would put down Kiss. But I just remember, if you liked Aerosmith and Ted Nugent and Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and all that, Kiss was perfectly fine. I don't remember any hard rock fans putting down Kiss.
Hmm.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, everybody that, I kind of hung out with was more into the mellow Southern California scene at that time.
Yeah.
And so even the radio stations down here in Los Angeles, KMET, and there were quite a few at the time, but they really, they put their nose up to Kiss, and it was, you were, it wasn't cool,
And I gotta say, Rita, like I went on a video. Buddy of mine has a channel, and we talked about smart versus dumb music, right?
Mhm.
And I really get my back up about this idea that Kiss is remarkably or significantly dumber than the likes of Beatle at their simplest, but certainly Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, Tom Petty, Billy Joel. There's a lot of bands out there that write fairly spare, minimalistic music. We don't think of these bands having great drummers for a reason, right? They're just keeping time, right? Wings. So musically speaking, everything that these bands come up with is there's no reason to put any of that on a pedestal above what Kiss is doing. And then even lyrically, because the idea with these bands, it's kind of like a brill building approach to the
Mm.
challenge we want with our careers to write the perfect song that connects with so many people. And that's usually a pretty modest, polished jewel of a song without a lot going on. It's not jazz, it's not prog. So Kiss really is in the same camp as these guys. And all of these bands, generally speaking, as a trend, what they are trying to do is write a song where like there's a string of 4 or 5 very short words, four letter, 5 letter words that come up with the greatest distillation of love gone wrong or love gone right kind of thing, right? So even what they're doing lyrically is quite ordinary and pedestrian and simple words, but they are trying to crush you with, a line that just hits home so well. But it is simple. They're not writing about, the Sandinistas or something like that, or nuclear war generally
Right.
speaking, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They're not, it's not elaborate, complicated. It's not storytelling. It's not Genesis, with these long tail, fantastical tales and stuff. So even lyrically, Kiss isn't in a terribly different camp than them. I mean, it is juvenile and potty humor and written for a lower demographic, but the simplicity level, even lyrically, is not that much different than our lauded singer songwriters out there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I had my rock snobberish called out, and people saying, "Oh, come on, you've never seen them. Go see them." So
Right.
I finally did that I think it was in the 90s. And it was like, okay, now I get it. Now I
Yeah, yeah,
totally get it. And I really thoroughly enjoyed the show. I mean, it was awesome.
yeah.
Another thing in your book that I really loved is the way that you always incorporate what's going on in the world at the time of the music that you're talking about. There were a lot of similarities to what's going on today. There was an oil crisis. President Nixon had massive problems with ending the Vietnam War, and then there was the Watergate incident that forced his resignation. So it's like a lot of similarities to what's going on 50 years later now.
Yeah, and that was when I wrote the book. I wanted those three things per month to be very separate. So we've got the whole world events thing, we've got everybody else and what they're doing in the music industry, and then we've got Kiss. And then when it was laid out, I was kind of a little shocked to see like the Kiss stuff is takes up more than half of the thing. And but when I wrote it, I wanted them all kind of to be equal. So there was a bit of back and forth, but right now all of that stuff's at the bottoms, and I enjoyed that part because I wanted this to be like a love letter to 1976. If you
Yeah.
lived through it, these are all the TV shows you saw. These were the hit movies. This is what's happening in sports. These are the plane crashes, the political coups. But even almost more so, I wanted to remind people that this is Eagles Hotel California. It's Aerosmith Rocks. It's Rolling Stones Black and Blue, Led Zeppelin Presence, Judas Priest, Sad Wings to Destiny, Rainbow Rising, Boston, Boston, Black Sabbath, Technical Ecstasy. So, there's a lot going on in the world besides Kiss in the music industry, and a lot of records that are going to go on out, emerge from this year and sell bucket loads of albums, way more than Kiss albums are.
Mm. One thing that was interesting to me is even back when I originally started looking into Kiss, they were assigned to Casablanca Records, which I thought was really, unique because Casablanca, for the most part, was like disco band, like Donna Summer, Village People, Parliament, Cher, Lips Incorporated. The only other that I know of rock band was T-Rex. And I'm wondering how much, I know this is just an opinion, but, what kind of support Casablanca was to this band. And if your thoughts are, had they gone to, Columbia, Atlantic, something like that, if they would have even been bigger, had more support from the record company.
No, I think so. The way it works is that Kiss is first with Casablanca. They start together. And they're a small entrepreneurial label. They believe in this. They have to be coaxed into it a little bit, but they believe in this project pretty quickly. Bill Aucoin's in there, and he's rolling the dice as well. He's entrepreneurial. So the disco comes a little later, and they do become, the label does have split attention when they do start having some disco hits as well, but it doesn't feel like anywhere along the way, and I don't feel like the Kiss guys ever say this either. It doesn't feel like anywhere along the way that they weren't paying attention to Kiss, because if you think about it, Casablanca, as Donna Summer shows up in the Village People and all that, we are getting Kiss alive with the studio side, and three sides live to that. We're getting the audacious four solo albums. We're getting, so that's 78. We're getting Dynasty in 79. We even get double platinum in 78, a double greatest hits album. They got an album out in 80, and then at that point we're up to the point where Casablanca is on the ropes and breaking up and getting sold off eventually, kind of thing. But I think Angel complains more about not getting the support that Kiss was getting and stuff. So I don't think Kiss felt particularly put aside. I think Casablanca was pretty loyal to them throughout. They just never really particularly had a lot of money. I suppose later on they did. Well, that's another thing. They even started to get into movie projects and stuff, The Deep and all that. So, and there was always a lot of drugs, and that place was running by the seat of its pants. And I remember the stories Larry Harris talked about how they'd pull every trick in the book to get the albums up the charts and things like that. So,
wow.
Right before 76, Kiss released the live album. Yep. And that was kind of interesting too, because there was kind of like the oil shortage was making it difficult to get vinyl records made. And that's, I thought an interesting thing. But that was like the really first big live album. Then a couple of weeks later, you had Frampton Comes Alive. But the whole dynamic of Kiss changed at that time. I mean, there was a difference in the way that they were promoted. Not only were they going to do it bigger, they were going to do it better.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I suppose before Alive, you've just got these three studio albums. None of them are gatefold. I don't think there's any inner sleeves in any of them. And then Alive gives you all sorts of doodads and goodies, and it's a double and all that. And then after that, it's more ads and more press. and you've got the Kiss Army officially starting with the insert to Destroyer there in March 15th, 1976. So yeah, it's at that point, it's a whole different thing. The merchandising is exploding, exponentially. I know people. One of my bugbears is people use that word too liberally, but it's definitely doubling at least a couple of times throughout 76 and 77, right? But yeah, they definitely are in a whole different league after Alive comes out, and now the company is saved. The double mortgages on homes and the credit cards to the max and all that. They can relax a little bit, kind of thing. But that was a big roll of the dice. They even made that album because they couldn't afford to do a studio album, so that's why they made Alive. But then ironically, they spent a lot on the packaging of Alive, and I just always remember there being lots of promotion of Kiss albums as well. So that's the other thing. I mean, Casablanca did spend on ads.
Yeah. And wasn't there something about interviews? Because I know they did a lot of the pop magazines. What was like
Dream Hit?
Yeah, wasn't there a situation where, like, if you wanted to interview the band, you had to guarantee you were going to put them on the cover or something like that?
Okay, I can't quite remember, but I definitely know that when we had our magazine in the starting in 1994 through to the early 2000s, that was the case. So I'm now trying to remember if that's in the book or that was a formalized thing or not. Because I don't think they were on the cover every time, but that's fine. They were on the covers a lot.
Yeah.
Because it was just natural. It just sold magazines so well, right? They always look great on covers. So, but yeah, I definitely do remember that being a thing they did later on, and pretty cool. It's a pretty cool idea that they would do that.
How did the year 76, like, was this the most iconic year for the band? The most that happened, the most promotion, the most albums?
Yeah, I would say so, because they enter the year touring Alive, which is touring the first three albums as well, and then March Destroyer comes out, and I think statistically speaking, people would say, if you took a poll, Destroyer is going to come out as the greatest Kiss album. I'd probably Detroit Rock City is going to come out as the greatest Kiss song. So now they're touring Destroyer. Then in July, they put out the Originals, which is a 3-record set to remind everybody about those first 3 albums, a repackaging of that. So now they're kind of touring that. And then in November, Rock and Roll Over comes out, and people are very fond of that album as well. I've noticed there's definitely a pronounced love of that album over 1977's Love Gun, for example. And Rock and Roll Over will just generally come up, I don't know, top 5 or 6 anyways. So yeah, they put out these 2 big albums, both of them. Destroyer is currently double platinum, and Rock and Roll Over is now platinum, which aren't massive numbers. I mean, everything we just talked about, all these other bands are, half those records are going to go diamond. So a lot of big records out there in the world. But for sure, and all in between, they are essentially, as shown in the book with the nice little tour date map thing that they do on each chapter. In between, they're just touring the whole time. They, Japan and Europe and all this stuff, all over America and Canada. So they, it's definitely the busiest year. 77, you get Love Gun, and you do get Alive too. So that's a pretty busy year as well. But then the wheels start falling off. They make some bad decisions here and there, or arguably bad decisions. With the solo albums, Dynasties, not particularly beloved. Unmasked is definitely not loved. The concept album is definitely not loved, and then Creatures of the Night, everybody loves it, but it didn't sell anything. So yeah.
I kind of like the idea of that. 76 started off also with, they went to a press release and arrived in a Learjet, so it just kind of showed the ostentatiousness of what was going to happen and so forth. But getting back to the recording of the Destroyer album, when they went to go choose a producer, they could not have done a better job than getting Bob Ezrin. I mean, that whole album changed the way that they recorded and the way that they wrote. I really have immense respect for them for doing that. I think that they had to be talked into that by Bill Auckland. I think he was the one that said, Bill was the manager, at the time. And he was the one that said, yeah, you got to do this.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, because he had already done this with Alice Cooper kind of twice, but the first time, the way it kind of worked out is so he's a protege of Jack Richardson in Toronto, and then he kind of sets up shop eventually as a New York kind of guy. But he transforms that band from a Zappa-esque band on Zappa's label, just almost like a freak band. Pretty much what they were. I mean, they were they hippies? Were they freaks? I don't know, but they had that freak element to them. And then he straightened out the songs and put this chorus here and this verse here and Love It to Death. They got a hit with I'm 18, and now they're firmly on Warner Brothers. He produces all those albums, makes them into huge stars. Then they break up. And then he makes Welcome to My Nightmare with Alice as a solo act. And I don't particularly think any of those previous albums he did had great high fidelity. I find them a little boxy and mid-rangey, lacking in bass, lacking in good cymbal sounds, tom-tom sounds. But Welcome to My Nightmare does sound really good, and he also puts in a lot of great ear candy and stuff to it. And I've always considered that like the prototype of Destroyer. It's almost like, okay, now I'm going to do it again with Kiss. And he goes in, he's a visionary. He is the boss. He will make this album feel like a trip, just like he did with Welcome to My Nightmare. He'll keep the identity, but he'll add some things. He'll make these guys routine these songs super hard. He rejected a whole bunch of songs.
Yeah.
He's instrumental in making Beth what it was, and then that turns out to be a big hit.
An orchestra behind it. I mean, who would ever think, Kiss with an orchestra behind it?
Yeah. And it got everybody talking, and some of it negative, so much so, some reviews were negative to the point where Kiss didn't bring him back, and it's Eddie Kramer that comes back. But now, Bob has been completely vindicated, and he laughs at that. I always think of when Beau Hill, we were talking about Rat one day, and he says, yeah, Rat fired me 5 times, kind of thing. It's like, they kept realizing how important I am and bringing me back, sort of thing. And then Bob Ezrin comes back for the music from The Elder and Revenge later on.
But yeah, that was such a defining, Detroit Rock City, great. And I think he made the band better. I mean, I know that he really helped with songwriting with Paul Stanley and stuff like that. But also around that time, you saw Ace kind of like going off in the corner and getting really stoned and stuff like that. And his participation in the band wasn't really that much, I think, right?
Yeah, and just like with Aerosmith, Get Your Wings, he would threaten to bring someone in, and then we did get a little Dick Wagner or whatever, but not a lot. But that threat was always there, kind of thing. And it's like, look, you can be replaced, kind of thing. So yeah, and I think Paul and Gene appreciated doing that extra hard work, and Ace and Peter not so much, kind of thing. And I know Ace got along much better with Eddie Kramer.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to do is, when I haven't studied an album in a while, I go back and check it out. And I'm like, I didn't realize how involved Kim Foley was in co-writing a few of the songs, right? I think it was on the Destroyer album.
Yes, but Kim's a funny bird, obviously. I've interviewed him before he died. He's gone now, but he's such a psychopathic self-promoter, number one.
Yeah.
And his brain, he was just scattered all over the place. But the way he is in there is that he's like a questionably co-writer of these songs with these other minor bands, and then he's pushing these, so use my songs kind of thing, or just like Bob would bring something forward. So Kim's not there with them writing songs with Kiss or anything. These are just songs that happen to have a Kim Fowley, credit on them, and Bob has an open enough mind that he says, a good song's a good song. We'll use it if we can, kind of thing, and then transform it as well. Not leave it the way it was.
I found it interesting also in that transformational year, 76, that Gene Simmons found some tapes from a band called Van Halen. And, he really wanted wanted the record company to sign him, and all his life, I think really Eddie really wanted to be a member of Kiss. I mean, obviously he had a tremendous career on his own,
Yeah.
but he really wanted to be a member of Kiss. And Gene said, "No, no, no, no. You go do your own thing." Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. Yeah, they almost ended up on Casablanca, and then that falls through. Van Halen has such this that's pretty long. I mean, it's a 5-year history really before the album comes out of just fits and starts and things not working out and things kind of fizzling and yeah, Gene eventually said just, go do what you do. He was generous about, the rights or whatever, anything like that. Just go get it done kind of thing. But yeah, it's interesting that they almost ended up with that whole Kiss Camp situation. And I remember, the whole Van Halen thing. People were almost saying they were too they've been around too long. We're getting tired. What they're doing is old hat. It's old news. And with David Lee Roth and the Jim Dandy thing and everything, right? It was almost like time almost passed them by. I mean, if punk and new wave would have taken off way bigger in the States, Van Halen might not have gotten signed. They might have been seen as an anachronism kind of thing. But oddly enough, they show up and almost single-handedly are the bridge band, the connective tissue of this, of keeping hard rock alive and making it even more exciting, because right in 75, 76, you get what I call the British coming back for a second wave, America showing up for the first time, depending on what you think of Detroit. So you've got Thin Lizzy and UFO doing well finally. They've been around for a while, but you've got Rainbow as a new band. You've got Judas Priest. And so you've got this wave of British bands coming back, and all the old guard are fading away. Sabbath's losing steam. Deep Purple's gone. Uriah Heep's nobody cares anymore. So the old guard's gone. And then you get this great American takeover with Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Kiss, little Blue Oyster Cult in there, little Heart. And then Van Halen shows up at the end of it, and they become this exciting new thing. Then the British take over again, kind of, for the new wave of British heavy metal. And then we find out, then hair metal starts up, and we get 10 years of amazing metal success and all of it based in Los Angeles. And lo and behold, Van Halen, it turns out to be the band that invented that. A little Aerosmith, a little Kiss in there, but mostly Van Halen. So yeah, they arrive at a strange place where I remember, I even did a whole kind of book on this of these albums, but I remember in 1978, it just seemed like the industry in America seemed to be abandoning all the hard rock stuff. We're deciding, we're kind of going to try this new wave thing. And then, like I say, in Britain, it was kind of a different situation. But yeah, Van Halen was just kind of alone being this super exciting, saving heavy metal band, 78, 79, 80, 81 kind of thing.
Real quickly, we're talking to Martin Popoff and his new book, Kiss 76. It was it was a year that was so important to the band in so many different ways. Martin, I was wondering, what did you learn? I know you've got a brain of knowledge that probably overflows to the point that you don't always remember everything, but you've got a great memory. In your research for this, what did you learn that blew you away about the band?
Well, kind of a nerdy thing. I didn't know about those couple of promotional samplers and EPs, white label dealies that were out. I'd never seen either of those before. So that's I made a nice little discography of everything that happened in 1976 and included that in the singles and stuff. And speaking of singles, I thought it was kind of funny that there were no singles out for Rock and Roll Over in 1976. They all showed up in 1977. And another thing, just this whole idea about how much people pay attention to the costumes as well, and how when the Destroyer tour started, the costumes weren't ready, and they're still in the Alive costumes and maybe a bit of a hodgepodge or whatever. So yeah. There were a few things along the way. And I also really got an appreciation for how there were other careers besides Kiss that were doing amazing in 76 in rock music. I mean, Kiss was commercially speaking, they were a big band. But that has a lot to do with selling tickets and selling merch plus the records. But if you talk about the record company, the record industry, Kiss was kind of a smaller band than a lot of these other acts.
What do you attribute the merchandising? Because nobody merchandises better than Kiss. I mean, you can go on their website and look, Kiss caskets, everything. I mean, it's really, sometimes it's an overload, but it's really quite phenomenal also. And then, like you said, 76 was really the beginning of the Kiss Army also. So, I mean, you had these legion of young kids, it's like, yeah, I got to get that. I got to get that. I mean,
Yeah.
the merchandising is still extremely strong with them.
Yeah, and it is a natural because it's just such a great look, and it's all kind of a unified monochromatic look that they have. Guys and girls, they can both paint their faces like this. You can go out to on Halloween in Kiss costumes. You can make Kiss costumes. There's 4 very interesting voices in the band. 3 great singers, 4 great voices. So when you have these voices and they're all sharing vocals and stuff, it adds to the idea of this overt and stated personalities of these bands: the demon, the cat, and the lover, or whatever, spaceman. So you've got these 4 characters. That's building Gene's idea of these guys as comic book heroes, and it just all makes really great sense. It's just something much more than just a band.
Uh, there was a interesting thing. I was looking at one of their first stadium shows that they did here in Southern California was at Anaheim Stadium, I think in 1976. And I noticed the right below them, that of course Kiss was the headliner, but Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band were second on the bill. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. But that was the Detroit connection. And then, Seeger goes off because he's a great live act anyway. And I forget the other 2 who were on.
You know what, Rita? I got to bring it up again. Bob Seger is dumb rock too. There's nothing smart about what he does either.
Oh,
lyrically,
man,
musically,
come on.
he's like almost less creative than Kiss because it's just based on old time rock and roll, right? It's based on 50s rock and roll. It's almost more predictable than what Kiss is doing at the music end. And then at the lyric end, he's like a cross between really just stupid basic lyrics and
No, come
good
on.
quality
Against
relationship
the
lyrics
wind.
as well. Right?
That was like 80, but like even 76, 77 Main Street, that,
right.
that was a great song.
But musically speaking, it's just super conservative. It's more conservative than what Kiss is doing, that's for sure. It's more the roots, the history of American rock and roll. It's more predictable where they're going to go, where the chord changes are, based on blues or based on boogie or it's ballads. Whereas Kiss is doing, at least they are kind of bringing in this new modern heavy metal that's less based on old ways of doing things. I often talk about this idea of the AB boogie switch, right? Which is how American rock they kind of sit out the early 70s. You've got your Mountain and Cactus and Sir Lord Baltimore and very little of anything heavy, right? But when things start picking up, Aerosmith, Montrose to me is the first American heavy metal album, but Aerosmith is a good example of this. Kiss Strutter is a good example of this. Cat Scratch Fever, where you could sit there with a little toggle box and you can go boogie rock verse. Here comes the chorus. Think of Strutter in your head, right? It's a little boogie rock verse.
Mhm.
So that's Bob Seger music. And then when you get to the chorus, it's like it's a heavy new riff thing, right? So it's this A-B switch between here's the old stuff mixed in with this new heavy metal thing. Cat Scratch Fever, same thing. The verse, and then the chorus, we get the riff, right? So it's like old school, modern. So that's that whole, and American bands and Aerosmith being the second coming of the Rolling Stones they're exactly doing that. 40% of what they're doing, 30% is Rolling Stones. The rest of it is,
Blues.
technical, Licking a Promise or combination, Nobody's Fault, Toys in the Attic. So it's this mix between the old and coming up with something a little more heavy metal. So yeah, that's the same kind of thing, and Tom Petty is the perfect example of repetition, straight line,
Well,
4/4, very simple arrangements, simple lyrics. So it is this idea of, and the good thing to say about this dumb music idea is that they are putting all these artists are putting their ego aside in service of the song, Kiss included. Whereas if you're in prog or if you're in jazz, it's really about your personal musicianship. It's not about how perfect the song has been polished to this diamond thing that can appeal to millions of people. They don't want to appeal to millions of people, right? They want to say, look how great a musician I am, sort of thing. So there's reasons this is all done. It's like you're sitting there with your crossword puzzle and your math formula to say, how do I make the most beautiful song that's going to touch so many hearts, kind of thing. And that's the whole challenge of simple music. But I think Kiss has to be included with all those other bands.
I just have the objection of using the word dumb, because I don't find anything dumb about that, But anyway, this concert at Anaheim Stadium also had Ted Nugent. But I was looking at the numbers. I think it was about 43,000 tickets sold, and the gross was $445,000.
Wow.
You think about like a show like that today, first of all, oh my God, it'd be interesting to see how much that could gross,
Yeah. It's funny. The whole economics of all this has been flipped in that in the old days, you were making your money, I think, more off of the records, and the concerts were to promote the records. And because concert ticket prices were so low, and I'm sure the bands were getting paid a lot lower to make it work at all.
Yeah.
But nowadays, then, obviously the music doesn't matter at all, but the concert tickets are through the roof. And that's where, okay, we have to make our money somewhere. It's going here, pay for it or else, kind of thing. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Mark, we're going to do a couple. These are going to be more personal questions.
Okay.
We kind of call it the bonus round.
Okay.
Who would you want to meet you've never met?
In all of rock and roll?
Well, it can be out of rock and roll, but sure.
Oh yeah, I thought you meant
Alive,
Kiss
dead,
or yeah.
No.
Okay, so in all of rock and roll, I would say Brian May would be way up there. I would say Robert Plant. I have been on a phoner with him, not by myself, but I got to ask him a question anyways as part of a group phone call with him, but that's all. And let's see, Roger Waters, Pete Townsend, they'd be up there as well. Yep.
Who do you regret never having the opportunity to see live?
Boy, a big one that I just declined to go to was the Grateful Dead in Buffalo. It was with a guy I didn't really know very well, and it would have been going to Buffalo from Canada, and the weather was looking bad and all that. And I thought, oh man, this could be a day and a half excursion sort of thing.
Or
so I've
week.
never seen the Dead,
Plus the drugs,
which makes it a week.
Yeah. And I probably, not too particularly easily, but I probably along the way cross paths a little bit with being able to maybe see Thin Lizzy live or Queen live, and I've never seen either of those two. So actually I have technically seen Thin Lizzy, but John Sykes was fronting the band.
Oh, okay.
What's still on your bucket list?
Boy, some interviews that I would like to have, I think at some point. There's books I would like to write, but there's books on bands I would like to write books on, but I don't have the interview, the well of interviews. And there
How
are
about dumb bands? Dumb bands book?
What's that?
No,
A dumb bands book?
Use the word dumb.
That would be a good huge thesis of a book. That is an idea I feel passionately about, actually.
Maybe it's just me. Okay.
Yeah. Don Henley and Peter Criss. There's not a lot of difference there. There's not a lot of daylight between those two when it comes.
A huge amount of difference.
Well, for drummers, right? For drumming.
Yeah, as far as drumming. But
Yeah,
then when
that-
you
that-
put Neil Peart in there, then it's like totally different.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and Peter Criss lyrics versus Don Henley lyrics, there's a lot of daylight, I
Yeah,
think, between
yeah.
those two. But anyways,
Yeah.
but yeah, there are bands I would like to write books on, but I don't think I get a publisher to want to do it, and then I wouldn't want to get them to do it because I'd feel guilty if it wouldn't sell, and then it probably wouldn't sell. So, but yeah, there are definitely interviews I would like to do. Way at the bucket list, it would be things like doing an authorized book with someone really big, and do that 20 or 30 hours of interviews with them and do a book. That would be pretty amazing.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if it was one of your, the Robert Plants or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Magazine, man. I love magazine.
Yeah,
And
I
I've
wish that
never
would come
interviewed
back.
Howard Devoto, but I would love to talk to that guy someday. There's a few guys like that. It's an odd way of thinking, but there's two or three guys like that I almost think they are so godly to me that I never want to talk to them. It's like just leave the relationship the way it is, kind of thing. Maybe
you don't want to hear one bad thing that would totally taint everything you've thought about them.
Yeah, I mean, I love the catalog so much that it's almost like I just want to leave them as immortals that I've never talked to, kind of thing. The Clash is a little like that. I have written a Clash book, but I've never talked to a single member of the Clash.
Yeah. We're kind of at this apex, I think, as a society of people who love music and what we were doing. You writing about rock and roll, we, CW and I being in the radio business. What do you say to a young person who has that same amount of passion? How can they find a future, job, a future way of making a living in this business? What do you see?
I think there's a clear enthusiastic place, and that's start a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
And just try to grow something really big that way. You can ask for and maybe get some promos or something, but generally speaking, you're going to get an advance of the you're going to get the files sent to you, and you could do that. But putting that aside, you've got the entire, music library of the world of all time in front of you for free on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music or whatever, or for your subscription. I mean, there's no excuse not to be able to find lots and lots and lots of stuff to talk about. But I mean, you can go out and make art and you can make music, but it's so fragmented and it's so easy to make music these days, technologically speaking. And it just seems like the skill level just keeps going up and up and up and up. Like, there are thousands of drummers that can run circles around all our favorite drummers of all time from the 70s, and half of them are 7-year-old Japanese girls, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just it's amazing the quality of musicianship out there. So there is there's a fire hose of art coming at you all the time in music or in the visual arts or any of the arts, because art is a super fun career and everybody would like to do it. But it is getting so easy to do it. But like I say, there are no barriers to entry on anything. Like I say, you can find plenty to talk about and come up with good topics and stuff and try to build a YouTube channel. So reviewing is, because there's no glory really in reviewing for a big website. They're not going to pay you anyways, and you're not going to get a physical promo. So what's the point of that? Just do your own, do your own channel kind of thing. So yeah, and as we said before, I suppose the industry is somewhat alive on the live end of things. So musicians themselves are trying to work this business model of playing small shows and lots of them, or broadcasting, or doing YouTube shows, or doing, private lessons and stuff like that. There's all these other new little things that come up all the time, but and then AI is going to blow the whole thing up.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
That's a whole nother podcast and then some.
Yeah.
So, well, great. Thank you, Martin. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Good luck with the book. It's already out now, Kiss 76. As I've said in the past, it's one of those miniature coffee table books that's got tons of great photos, memorabilia, ephemera, And then the great timeline at the bottom of each page that kind of matches exactly what's happening in Kiss's career at that time to what's going on in pop culture and the world as we literally at the same time. So great book. So congratulations.
All right. Thank you, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Always enjoyable to talk with you. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Yeah.
Have
Very
a
cool.
blessed springtime. I think we're at the spring equinox. So
We are.
no, we're going
it's
into
85
summer now.
here.
We're forgetting
Toronto
spring.
hasn't forgotten about winter yet. No, it doesn't look like
You
it.
still have snow on the ground there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. Man.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks
Mark.
All right.
again.
See you later.
Appreciate
Take
it.
care.
Bye now.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Always some interesting stories when you look back at history and see how sometimes it can repeat itself. That's strange, isn't it?
It is. And it was cool to look at that because like I kind of said, I think in the interview that, I wasn't a big Kiss fan at that time. I'm still not a huge Kiss fan. I appreciate them now more than I did back then. But just to learn so much about what happened and how that year was so iconic to the band, for the band themselves. So much went on at that time.
They're the sons of Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley have a band now. They actually sound pretty decent.
What's it called? Do you know?
I don't know what the name of the band is.
Mini Kiss? Are they short people?
No, they're tall.
No, there is a band called Mini Kiss if you haven't seen
that's
them.
Right. That's right.
Which are little people in Kiss makeup and, covering their tunes. Anyway, enough about me.
Our special thanks to Steve Roth for coordinating the interview.
Martin's website is martinpopoff.com. Follow Martin on social media at Instagram, martinpopoff63, and Facebook, Martin Popoff Author.
The new book can be found at your favorite local bookstore or record store or any of the big media giants that are taking way too much of your money.
And taking over the world. Check out our show notes. It's on our website, which is rockandandrollconfessional.rocks. There you can find links to some of the subjects talked about in today's show, including links to order Martin's book, Kiss 76, sample pages from the book so you can get an idea of what's really inside, some old concert footage from some Kiss concerts in 76, and a little bit more.
Please support the podcast by subscribing wherever you can, writing a review, follow and comment on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and share our posts with your friends, please.
Pretty please. Thank you, everybody, so much. It's been such a pleasure, so much fun. And we got more stuff coming up right around the corner.
Have a wonderful week, everybody.